Welcome to the InStory Show. I'm Devorah Spilman, your host, and today I am thrilled to welcome Aurora Farber. Hi, Aurora.
Hi, so great to be here. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Me too. And our focus this season is on how to trust your intuition and become the leader of your own life. So Aurora is a feminine leadership coach, an intuitive guide, and a modern day priestess. And she's going to explain to us what that all means. But as with everybody, I like to start by having you tell us a little bit of your story, a little bit of what I like to call how you got from there to here. Because I have a hunch, just like many of us, this is not the work you have always done. So tell us a little of your story.
Yes, well, let's see, how did I get from here to there? Well, I've done many things in my life. I was a Navy brat, so I moved around a lot, went to college, studied literature, and then right after college, I decided to pack my bags and go to Europe for 2 months on a backpacking trip. Big adventure. The adventure was calling me. But I ended up staying for 6 years. So during that time, it was a really beautiful time in my life. And I really lived, kind of broke through the stories that I had had about, oh, you need to follow this path. My path was really one of adventure and wanting to find and feel the freedom from not knowing what was going to happen next. So I really love that. Then from there, I became a mortgage loan officer of all things. So I went into finance, worked for a bank for a while. Then I got married. My husband and I, we moved to Taiwan, and then we moved to China. And that's where we had our first daughter here in the States, but when she was about 18 months old, we moved to China where we had our son. We lived there almost 10 years, and now we've been back in the States for 5 years. So wow. During that time, I've done all kinds of different things, trying to balance being a mom and, following my own passion. So that's included teaching kinder music, teaching Pilates. I've just done a lot of different things. When I was in Europe, I was modeling. I taught English to foreigners. So yeah, I've done all kinds of things. And somehow I've found myself here as a feminine leadership coach. So that's my passion, is to really help women ignite their feminine fire. For me, feminine fire means power, this new power that we really need in our world today. And it's power that's different from the past. It's not patriarchal power. It's power that's aligned with love and wisdom. So it's really heart-centered power. And I'm also an intuitive guide. So when you ask me to be on the show, I'm like, yes, please. I would love to be on your show because I really believe in the power of intuition. I've noticed that in my life, even going to Europe that first time, it was an intuitive prompt that sent me to Europe, which really changed my life profoundly. And I'm also a modern day priestess, which basically means that as much as I can, I try to walk in the world with an open heart and practice walking as love in the world. And so there are different tools and strategies, one of them being working with archetypes and working with intuition.
Okay, so I would love to hear kind of what led you into this work, right? Because none of the things you did before sound anything like what you're doing now.
Well, that's such a great question, because my intuition led me to this work of all things. So I was in Shanghai and I had a 6-year-old daughter, 2-year-old son, and I had this feeling in my heart that I loved being a mom. I had always wanted to be a mom, and I became a mom when I was older, when I was about 35. So I really cherished it, but I wanted something more, but I didn't know what it was. It was this yearning for something. I liked a lot of things, and I just couldn't choose one. And so one night I had a dream, and in the dream, I ride a wheelchair like a skateboard. And so I'm riding this wheelchair. I go to this party. There's a man there who's very important, and I want to talk with him. I come up to him, and he sort of dismisses me because he's looking for someone more important than I am, or more worldly or something. And I sink back into my wheelchair and I roll myself out. Then I go into this baseball field where there are a lot of people and they're singing gospel music. And there's a woman that I call Joy there, and she's there and she's singing and, praising God, and she's so happy. And so I woke up from that dream and I knew that it was telling me something, and I knew I could identify with those two aspects of myself that weren't integrated, my masculine and my feminine. My feminine that was overgiving and overwhelmed as a mom and always serving everyone and trying to be happy and mostly was happy. And there was this part of my masculine that I was afraid to step into, because if I did, I might turn out to be like Mr. Wig. And Mr. Wig only looked out for himself. And so what I did is I sat and I thought, I need to work with this. I worked it through a dream group that I'm in. Then I worked it through active imagination writing, and I had the characters dialogue. And as they dialogue, they began to see what the gifts of the other was. And finally they said, oh, well, how can we work together? And the way that they work together is they said, we can dance. And so Joy said, yes, come on, baby. And she started dancing like this. And Mr. Wig was like, oh, you know, I can't dance like that. So he took her in his arms and put her in the tango position. And they began to tango. And so that became the basis of my work, which is about integrating the masculine and feminine and allowing the feminine power to flow. I painted that as 2 tango dancers, and 3/4 of the painting is the woman with her dress on fire. Because I really believe for us as women to be leaders, we need that masculine structure, our own inner masculine, that is noble and structured and helps us so that we can flow and be brilliant and to share and ignite our feminine fire.
So what happened? So this all came to you and you started to feel it. So then what did you do?
So what I did was I had been reading this book about creating your best life, and I had been, and like many of our listeners may be thinking, oh, I could be a therapist, I could be a coach, I could go do this and that, but I was stuck in indecision, and plus everybody needed me. So I didn't hardly have time for my own self, right? So what I did is I made time for myself. And I said, I'm just going to pick one. And that was when my masculine came in and said, okay, this is the structure. And I enrolled in a coaching program online because I was considering being a therapist, but because I lived overseas, it really wasn't possible for me. I was considering going back to graduate school, but my children were very small. And so I said, okay, this is the one. And then I fell in love with it. So my intuition and what I like to call my mythic essence, like my higher self, knew that that was the pathway for me and gave me that dream. And I had to make the choice to follow it or not, or to ignore it, right. Which I have done sometimes, like we all do.
Right. So talk a little bit about what your work has developed into. Like, why is intuition so important to you? How do you help people with it? Like, we talked a little bit about what's daily intuition. What are some of the realms in which you use intuition yourself, but also that you help others to develop it?
For me, intuition is so important because it really helps you create a relationship with your soul, with what I call your mythic essence, right? So it's really the foundation of everything. We're so taught that, we need to find our passion, what we're good at, all the logical ways. And those are wonderful ingredients to find your passion. But inside, I really believe that your soul knows why you are here right now on this planet. And so for me, intuition is important in my daily life, for my own guidance, whether I'm trying to decide when to launch a program, what my next steps are, what to do with my family, what to do with the coronavirus, for example, or anything that's happening out in our world. And it's also helpful for me with my clients because I do intuitive moon mat readings. I use my intuition to be a guide for others as well. So it can be very practical. Sometimes it's a little mysterious, depends on how you receive intuition. And I'll talk about that too, the 4 kinds of ways that I share about how to receive intuition. But it really is a foundation of everything in my life. Okay,
so start to break it down a little, right? Because we're traditionally not taught this.
Right.
Right. Our culture currently in our educational system doesn't teach this. So we all get to relearn it in a sense. Like we have it, I think, as kids, but it's not valued.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so I'll give you an example. Right before this call, I said, I'm going to pull a card. And so I pulled a card. It's the sun. And you say I have the moon behind me.
Right.
And I talk about the moon. My programs are a lot about the moon. But what the sun, when you just said that to me, so I'm listening. That's one of the key pieces of intuition, is to listen and to be present in the moment. So when you just asked me that question, I thought, the sun, it's about healing, recreation, play, and radiance. And what I thought of, it's so true. We have been taught, we live in a solar world. We're taught that we have a to-do list and we have 24 hours, 7 days a week to get it done, 365 days a year. Our calendar is Gregorian. It's based on the sun, how long it takes for the earth to go around the sun. So already our focus is outside of ourselves, right? However, the moon is how long it takes for the moon to go around the earth. So the center is ourselves. And that's what we're not taught. We're taught to look for the answers outside of ourselves. Right. And so how do you begin to look for the answers inside of yourselves? Well, one of the things I love about the moon, it's a 28-day cycle. For women, this is our superpower, because our bodies have been in training for years through our menstrual cycles, because we have our menstrual cycle based on 28 or so days. And so we naturally, that is our feminine rhythm. And what it teaches us, if you go out and look at the sky, you can see that there's dark times of the moon and full times of the moon. So what I love to tell women, it's our birthright to rest and to go within and to listen. And especially that new moon phase, that's the time to go within. So that's one of the suggestions I'd say to begin to develop your intuition, is to start to pay attention to something besides the calendar and the sun, and instead to tune into your body and to tune into the moon, because the moon is showing you a path of how we're meant to live as women. We're meant to have times to go within, to begin to sprout things, to shine and connect. We're coming up on that soon. And then to come back in and to receive our wisdom so that we can start again. So that's number one, would be to use those cycles. Then the other thing is, when we do go within, it's the deep listening, right? And one of the archetypes I love to work with, one of the reasons I love to work with archetypes, it's like they're an extra energy source that we can plug into.
Well, and after you finish this, maybe you'll talk a little bit more about what are some of the archetypes you work with and what does that mean?
I will. That's a great idea. And so one of the archetypes that I'm talking about is the priestess archetype. And one of her tools, because they're an energy source, they have tools, is the chalice. So I would like to invite your listeners, as a practice, is to think about this chalice here. If this, or a cup, right? I have a glass of water right here, same thing, right? But if it's full already, it's not able to receive anymore, right? So the idea is to empty your chalice. And so what does that mean in the body? The body is like a chalice. This is our sacred vessel. This is what houses our spirit. And so what's in your body? Like, what are those limiting beliefs? What are all the stresses? What is that to-do list? Because when we come to try to be still and to receive our intuition, if all that noise is going on, we can't receive, right? So that's an invitation, is to use this image of the chalice in your body. And when you come to practice any kind of intuition, is to let go and empty. And one of the things I love to do is I just name it. Even if I'm in the shower in the morning and I just want to empty myself before I do my intuitive practice, I'll imagine the water running through all my chakras and saying, I'm letting go of this interview that I have to do, any nerves that I have, this project that I'm doing, this concern I have about the family or whatever. And I'm just allowing it to flow through me and empty out and down into the earth. So that's number one, is to empty, because when you're empty, then you can receive. And so that's what I'd love to talk about too, is how do you receive? Sound good?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Really good. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So, I love to call them, and others call these tools the same, the 4 clairs. And some people say there are 5 or 6 or 8 clairs, but 4 is a good place to start. So the first clair is clairvoyance. So if you're clairvoyant, that's my primary gift. And as I speak these, I invite our listeners to kind of tap in to see, okay, yeah, I do that. Or maybe that's my intuitive gift. So it's kind of building that awareness of what your intuitive gift is. So clairvoyance, you might see images a lot. You see symbols. You have a lot of dreams. So someone who is clairvoyant will often say, oh, I see. Like just in a conversation, I see, because they see things, right? The second one is clairaudience, and clairaudient people can hear their messages. So it might come as a phrase, go to the left, or take that course, or whatever that is. So they will often say things like, I hear. Oh, I hear you. Yes, I hear you. So that's clairaudience. Clairsentience are people who feel it, people who get goosebumps. When something is said, they know it feels like truth, or they just have a clear yes. They see something that they want to do, and it's like, yes, I have to do that. So they will often say, I feel, I feel you, I feel, right? And then finally, it's claircognizance, and those are people who just know. They just have a knowing, and it's very, very clear. And they will say things like, oh, I know. So it's a really fun exercise to kind of feel into which of those are you, and each of them has their advantages, right? So I'm mostly clairvoyant. I see a lot of symbols, and it's great because I love to work with images and symbols. So it's very metaphorical, but it's not a clear answer all the time. So the second thing I would invite your audience to say is, ask themselves is, oh, this is my primary one, but which is the one I would love to develop?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was, I wanted to know, because I can spend a lot of time with metaphor and writing and all that. Like I told you about my dream, it takes a lot of time to write and paint and all this, right? But just to know. And as you step into that, what I find so interesting about intuition is intuition requires trust.
Mm-hmm.
You have to believe it. And where most people get hung up is they doubt it, or maybe they believe it and then they second guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so my invitation to everyone is to identify which is the highest clair for you, and to begin when you're sitting in your meditative practice or whatever you do, asking your intuition, go for that one. So for me, I always go for symbols because they come to me quickly. But then if you want to stretch yourself a little bit more, just sit there and go, oh, for me, for example, it'd be like, oh, what do I know to be true? And see if it can come that way. So it's like a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger your intuition becomes.
Mm-hmm. And so as people work on this, where do you see it's taking them? Like you were talking about, like the connection to your soul. And so talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, so I wanted to share about your soul and your soul purpose, right? I believe that we're all here, that we have incarnated at this time for a reason. And each of us has our own paths, right? And so the more that we can spend time with listening to ourselves and being guided by that, the more that we can really be of service to the world for the reason why we are here. So for me, I'll give you an example. On my 50th birthday, I was like, wow, I'm half a century years old. This is quite incredible, right? I would love to have a vision for what am I meant to do? Because I'm kind of a late bloomer too. As I've told you, I've done a lot of different things in my life. And it took me until, my early 40s to find this path that I really love. And that's just been my soul path. So I said, I'd love a vision. And so I wanted to read this to you. I wrote a blog about this, and this is how it came to me in a vision. And one of the ways I love to activate my intuition is in the bathtub, because water holds memory. And so if you want to really activate your intuition, the bathtub's a great place to do it, being with water. So I was in the bathtub. I emptied myself out. I said, I'm here to serve. I'm here. So this is my vision. I see a heart that spins and turns into an erupting volcano. The lava floats down, destroying the old and creating new pathways until it hits the shore and forms something new. In the distance, I see in my own boat the other women in their own boats coming toward the island. We each hold the flame of our power, love, and wisdom, our feminine fire, at our heart center, and sing songs of love, remembrance, power, and sovereignty. Each of us on a mission to set the world on fire with love. That makes me choke up when I read that.
Oh, so beautiful. Wow.
Yeah. And even this right here, that's my tears. Water are often a sign that my intuition is speaking.
Right.
And I know that this resonates so for you, Devorah, because this is part of your mission, is to see those legions of women out there singing their song, sharing their story, connecting to one another in their own power, right? And
Right.
so that's what I'm saying is how it can activate your soul. It opens your heart. And for me, in my little Aurora phase, I can go into that. And when I received that vision, I was like, what? Like me? And so how do I continue to walk the path in the darkness? And how do I continue as I remember that vision? And I go within, especially in those times when I doubt myself, when my smaller self wants to say, I can't do that.
Right.
Who am I to do that? Like, but there's a part of me that my soul voice has said, no, you were given that vision for a reason. And you can choose to ignore it. And some days I have, but then it comes back and it's like, knock, knock, knock.
So true. That I think a lot of us are feeling that sense of a calling.
Yeah.
And often it is that sense of a calling, and you don't know quite, like in the beginning when you could feel the calling, but you know the shape of it. And I think I always tell people when they say they have that, I say, I love this problem.
Yeah.
My favorite problem. You feel a calling on your soul, but you don't have the shape of it yet. It's such a wonderful thing to work on.
Right. Because there's magic in that. You don't know what the shape of it is. It could be anything.
Right. And there's more and more support now for us to trust this calling on our soul, this more intuitive knowing. And I want series like this and people who do work like you do. And also the advent of the internet. We can find each other now.
Yes, that is so true. Oh, see, I just got chills from that. Clairsentience.
Yep. No,
we found each other.
Right. Someone said to me, well, why now? And I said, because now we can. Now we can do this with each other because we couldn't find each other before.
Yes.
And we didn't have access.
Yes. Now we can, and now we must.
Mm-hmm.
Like we must. That's also in the center of what my soul is telling me, is that this is the time of awakening, and it's awakening to our feminine power. We don't have a lot of models for that.
Right.
Like we don't want to follow the traditional masculine power where I'm better than you, or I compare myself to you, and that's how we feel powerful. It's like, I'm amazed at you, and I'm so grateful to be in a conversation with you, and how can we lift each other up?
Right, 100%. It's an integration. I talk about that a lot, that integrating all of who you are, everything counts. And it's like a power that's from us, but not trying to copy others or shut it down. And so I love how you talk about the integration of the masculine, feminine, and how we lead. Now, I've been thinking a lot about that. Like, how do you lead with your intuition? How do we lead from this new place that isn't this place of force?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? On this?
Yeah, I love that question.
Of leading.
Yeah, I love it. And I always love talking about my edge of what I'm actually experiencing, because I learn when I speak. And so my edge really has been showing up in devotion to my soul in my service.
Mm-hmm.
Making that a priority. So every day waking up early, and I didn't do this before. I started in January because I can just feel the energy of this year. It's very powerful for creating new structures in our lives. Mm-hmm. And so waking up early and spending time with my body, exercising, spending time learning something, and spending time in my intuition and showing up in service to that and making that a priority. Mm-hmm. I think that it's almost like, for me, that morning ritual is the way we lead our day. And that's the way that we can lead our lives. Yeah. And that's how we can lead others. Yeah. Because it's in devotion. Mm-hmm. And I love that word devotion because it has to do with the heart. My vision, I see a heart that spins, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And turns into an erupting volcano. That's what I see as the medicine for our times, when a world that feels like it's on fire, literally, and sometimes in some places it is, that we can't match that by trying to put that fire out. We have to ignite our own passion to take a stand for what matters. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I see that all the time when I talk to women who have this feeling like, I raised my vibration, like I'm on this other level, and now the old thing I did before isn't working.
Right.
right? It's this old path. I can't even go back in there because I don't fit. It doesn't, you know, but I work a lot with story, and I work a lot with image and metaphor also, because you kind of have to give, so to speak, clothing, so to speak, to this invisible calling. And partly our stories help us find, you know, our individual way of shaping this calling.
Yes. So true.
Right? Because your story of your dream, like the way it came to you, like that's a big part of it, is honoring your way, whatever's unique for each of you. And so that actually leads sort of nicely into your free gift, which is kind of an investigation of who you are. So tell us a little bit about your free gifts. I know you kind of have a 2-for-1 offer here for the free gifts, and I've done one of them. It was super cool. So
yeah, that's wonderful. I'm curious, what did you get?
The Queen.
The Queen. Oh, hail Queen.
It's a thing where it's like a quiz and you answer it and then you get an archetype. So it was very fun.
Yeah. So what I was saying earlier about archetypes, what I love about archetypes is that archetypal energy is a collective pattern of consciousness, right? So like the mother, we all can have a sense of what the mother is. And each archetype has a light side and a shadow side. Like you can have the dark mother, the smothering mother, right? Or you can have the unconditional loving mother. So those are, you know, the light and shadow. And in the priestessing world, we love our shadow as we love our light. We don't negate any of it, right? Because often our shadow leads to our light. So with archetypes for women, as we step into feminine leadership, what's so wonderful is if we need to plug into an archetype like the Queen, you know, if you got to sit down and do your taxes, it's time to get into your Queen, because the Queen is the one who's looking out for the whole queendom, right? So archetypes are a way that we can plug in and access more energy to do the sacred work that we're here to do. So my archetypal quiz, and also to help women to discover their soul purpose, it is like what you said, Devorah, is about understanding who we are, right? And where we're at. And then in the Moon Cycle Power Path, which is the first quiz, there are 4 archetypes to help you love like a mother, reign like a queen, shine like a goddess, and lead like a sage. And you'll identify with one of them, but all of those are actually power sources for you to access in order to really follow that rhythm I talked about in the beginning of going in to come out to go back in, right? So all of that helps you align and regenerate and rejuvenate your power through these archetypes. So that's the first quiz. And the second quiz is a really wonderful one called the 5 Faces of Priestess Leadership. And in it are 5 different archetypes that can show you what kind of leader you are and what kind of work that you might be really great at doing based on your leadership styles. And those are all based off of another system called the 13 Moon Mystery School. So
cool.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. And it's fun, and it'll be interesting. And then we have a Facebook group, so everybody's invited, like, go do the quiz.
Oh,
That's how it affects you, and then share what archetype you are, or which of the clairs feel like your most strong path, and any questions you have, because we'll jump into the Facebook group to share.
I love that idea. Yeah,
and Aurora will come in and connect with you guys.
That would be great. And these archetypes are also connected to the moon phases. So depending on when the Facebook group starts, there will be an archetype kind of leading that as well. So we can have conversations about that, and it could be really fun.
Super cool. So, all right. So we're almost out of time. So leave us with a few last words of inspiration.
Let's see. Okay. I'm just going to model what intuitively I have to share with you. So I have to show you my second card I picked. This is from the 13 Moon Mystery School. It's a spider web, right? It's called Connect. And the words are expansion, larger view, vision, present moment, and groundedness. So I'm inspired to say to all of the women listening to this today is that you have a place on this loom, that you have a mythic purpose, and that your soul voice is yearning to communicate with you so that you can discover that. And together, all of us together, we can really light the world on fire with love.
So beautiful. Oh. Oh, I feel inspired. I hope you all feel inspired. Trust your intuition. Aurora, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. So honored to be here.
And thank you everybody for tuning in, and join us in the Facebook group. And as I always say in farewell, remember, go out in the world, share your story, live your purpose, and be a blessing. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.